Hi, Jake.
Hello, long time no talk to.
Yeah, I think we've seen more of each other in the last 24 to 48 hours than we've seen of our own spouses. That's not good.
Probably
That's
not.
not
Not.
that's not going to hold up.
Mm-mm.
That's not going to hold up at all. But we are here to talk about something very important, and that's the fact that Trey White is in the portal.
Oh, no, let's lead with Will Smith, 10-year, $141 million contract.
That's right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Will Smith, Dodgers, a guy that a rags to riches story. You got to love it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in all seriousness, no, though, we had to got to take a step back to take like four major steps forward because everything that we've talked about over the last 2, 3 weeks, maybe even the last like 3 months, you just throw all that out the window because Louisville basketball has a new head coach at 3 o'clock on Thursday. It will be officially announced, and Pat Kelsey will be brought in as Louisville basketball's newest head coach. Jake, what was your initial reaction when you heard all of this go down this morning?
So we spoke last night and we spoke a lot about Richard Pitino because I think at that time that was where a lot of the fan base believed we were going to end up today. It sounds like an offer never went his way. And then we also spoke about Josh Schertz. And we briefly touched on Pat Kelsey, but I think at that point it seemed like it was Josh Schertz. Oh no, wait, he's got this issue where he's already signed some sort of agreement with St. Louis, so maybe we can't get him. And if we can't get him, then it's Richard Pitino. And then we never really thought that it would get past Richard Pitino, so we didn't talk about him a lot. So all
Right?
of a sudden today it's Pat Kelsey, and I'm sitting in a conference like, what the fuck? How
Yeah.
did we end up here? I thought this was like our third option from today and our 12th option overall. So I was a little, damn it, are we serious? Because I talked myself into Josh Schertz. I have for a while. I'd started to talk myself into Richard Pitino with his ability to handle all the pressure that would come with the situation, his understanding of who Louisville basketball is, what fans will expect, and his experience at a high major college and making it to the tournament some. So I was a little caught off guard, but the more I've looked into it, the more excited I've been able to get myself for who Pat Kelsey is as a coach, but also who he is as a man and the level of excitement and the personality he will bring to Louisville. So I'm on the rise, I'm on the incline.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think, maybe everything that we've done has kind of led to this discussion because we've kind of like just really like once we got to the Pat Kelsey conversation, we'd be like an hour into every show and be like, yeah, Pat Kelsey, kind of may on that hire. Don't think it really happened. I think it's a fallback option. But as we've gone through a lot of these candidates, some of the names that we initially heard, right? Like Eric Musselman, Jerome Tang, trying to think of even like a Dusty May. A lot of these guys interviewed and it didn't work out. And I think the deal with Dusty May was, Josh Hurd said himself that he was going to hire somebody who is willing. We had the whole thing where he said he had to get somebody who was willing to crawl here, but he had to get somebody who understood the nature of the job. I think we were excited, and a lot of what we talked about yesterday was Richard Pitino understanding the value of being Louisville basketball's head coach. But what we, you know, I think what we fail to see a lot of these conversations that happen outside the lines, behind the scenes, a lot of these conversations around like a Jerome Tang, around an Eric Musselman, these are guys that they had conversations with, and for one reason or another, they didn't think that they were a good fit. From what I've heard, I've been told this from a couple of people. I don't think there's anything out there that's like crazy that Jerome Tang has done. I think they brought him in, had an interview, or Josh Hurd went out there and had an interview, and he bombed. Like he just very quickly realized this isn't going to be the guy for the job. Um, so that brings us to today. Pat Kelsey, a guy that we've really just been kind of skirting around. I think when we made an initial list, I think you had what, 10, 12 guys on there. Was Pat
I
Kelsey
got
even a
yeah.
part of that? Was he a
No,
part of that list?
I was up to 15 and he wasn't even
Yeah.
he wasn't a part of the list at all. I made that list and people would throw in names. I'm like, oh yeah, Shaheen Holloway, we can add that or whatever. And initially, Pat Kelsey wasn't even a name that any fan, I think any media member was bringing up whatsoever.
Well, there's one guy that's been bringing up a lot, and he's going to pat himself on the back a lot. That's a guy that's been a friend of the show at different points, in Jeff Goodman. But I've always thought that Pat Kelsey's name was being floated as more of Jeff Goodman trying to sell Pat Kelsey as a coach at Louisville more than it was him really thinking that Pat Kelsey was going to end up at Louisville. Because I know the nature of that relationship. It's very similar to his relationship with Chris Mack, where, Pat Kelsey is just like, seems like a chill, cool guy that gets along with a lot of these media guys. And it seems like Jeff Goodman's kind of ingratiated himself with that group of guys. Now, I don't think that, a lot of people talked about, okay, well, Pat Kelsey is a Chris Mack protege. But from what we've heard, Mike Rutherford straight up came out and said this. He doesn't think that Pat Kelsey and Chris Mack are even buddies anymore. Like maybe they talk, like maybe Chris Mack text him sometimes or something like that. But it doesn't sound like it's something where he's a guy that was groomed to be the next guy at Xavier or the next guy at Louisville or any of that stuff. It seems like he's a guy that happened to coach for him. But I don't think that there's like I don't think there's any thoughts either way from like the Chris Mack camp on this hire. So for everybody saying, there's a lot of that conversation that's happened today, right? Where people have come out and said, we don't want a guy from the Chris Mack coaching tree. Chris Mack was a failure here. That's another conversation for another day. I got in like a 15-minute rant with my girlfriend about this earlier today. With all that in mind, as we've started to look at Pat Kelsey's resume, I think the assessment has gone from, okay, this is a guy that's never won a tournament game, so that's not a guy that we should consider for Louisville. But then we started to put things into perspective. Who was College of Charleston before Pat Kelsey got there? Who was what kind of program was Winthrop before he got there? And so Jake and I, we've been kind of breaking down, what does that look like? What kind of situations did he walk into, and then what did he do at those programs? And the things that stood out to me were the program history before he got there and how he left those programs. So Winthrop has one tournament win in program history in 2007. When they won that game, their coach, why am I blanking on his name?
Greg McDermott.
Nope, it was
not Greg McDermott before him. Wichita State's head coach. I can't think of it now.
Yeah, why am I blanking on Wichita State's head coach's name? Doesn't matter. The guy that almost knocked Louisville out of the tournament in 2013. We'll fact check that in just a second because it's going to bother me. But regardless, their one tournament win immediately got him swept away by Wichita State. Greg Marshall.
There we go. I was wondering why I had Greg in my mind. There we go. Greg Marshall, not Greg McDermott.
So Greg Marshall won their only tournament game in school history. And then he immediately was bumped up to a job at Wichita State. Similar situation at College of Charleston. They won one tournament game back in 1997. College of Charleston, correct me if I'm wrong here, I believe they've been to 7 NCAA tournament game or 7. They've been to the NCAA tournament 7 times in school history. Winthrop has been to the NCAA tournament 11 times. Of the 11 times that Winthrop went to the NCAA tournament, Pat Kelsey was the head coach 4 times. They went to the tournament 4 times in his 8 years, I believe. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. He was there every single year. Yeah. He only had one losing.
They came in either first or second in 7 of his seasons there. So sustained success at Winthrop, really for the first time in program history. Then he goes to College of Charleston for 3 years. They're okay his first year. And then the next 2 years, they go on to win the conference championship. Last season, they lost to eventual national runner-up in San Diego State. And this season, they lost to Alabama, a really quality Alabama squad. But that's kind of the nature of this, right? When you look at, okay, well, how are you expecting guys to consistently win NCAA tournament games when you're in a one-bid league that's going to get an 11, 12, 13, 14 seed every single season? And so, the reason why a guy like a Dusty May, goes on this magical run last season and it's a huge deal and everybody wants to sweep him up is because that doesn't happen very often. And Pat Kelsey has been in conferences that are at a lower tier than an FAU was. So putting that all into perspective, is that the kind of stuff that's getting you excited? What are these stats that we're looking at? Whether it be their offensive efficiency, what they bring to the table, style of play wise. What is it that's getting you pumped up?
Yeah, so I think I've heard a lot of he's a Chris Mack disciple. We saw how that worked at Louisville. Chris Mack had a better resume at that time. It didn't work here 5 years ago. Why would it work now? If you look at his offensive rankings, his defensive rankings, he's really like almost the furthest away from a Chris Mack that you can find. Chris Mack, when he came in, was pack line defense, slow the game down, win with defense, win a game 64 to 58 or something like that. Like an ugly game, but you're winning. You're taking it. Pat Kelsey, no, not at all. 24th in offensive efficiency this year, averaged the third most three-pointers attempted per game with 31 threes attempted per game, top 50 in offensive pace, 11th most bench points. So he's playing like 10 dudes every single night. No one's getting more than 30 minutes a night. I mean, 27th most points per game. Like this guy is, I mean, it's why they matched up so poorly with Alabama. Is it's very fast paced. It's a lot of threes, which is what Alabama is as well. But Alabama just has 5-star talent, 5-star transfers, 5-star recruits. So it's hard for him to match up with a team like that when you're at College of Charleston. The defense is definitely not nearly as good. And I think that'll be the concern. I like his defensive principles, and we can talk about that a little bit more, but they were 180th in defensive efficiency this year, 198th in steals forced per game, 220th in defensive field goal percentage, averaged 45% opponent field goal percentage. So those are concerning. I will say in 2022, when they made the tournament as well, had a better record, they were 29th in defensive rating. So, and I've watched some of their clips. I've watched a few of their condensed games. I think he has the defensive principles in place to have a good defensive team. I don't think that'll be his trademark. I don't think it's a Chris Mack, a Tony Bennett, where that's how he's going to win his games. We're going to be a top 10 Houston team in defensive efficiency, defensive rating. But I think he has the principles in place to be able to have a good enough defensive team to be competitive, to win games in the tournament, to have us at 20 plus wins a year.
So to put this into a little bit of perspective, Pat Kelsey did play at Xavier, and that's how he found himself back at Xavier as an assistant coach in the early 2010s before he ultimately took the job at Winthrop. When he moved over to Winthrop, he did apply those pack line defense principles at first. They were a pack line team for a few years, and as time went on, as college basketball began to develop, he kind of adjusted with the times a little bit. And they pretty much, like you said, they stick to man-to-man principles on defense. They don't switch a lot on defense, but there's a lot of high ball pressure and a lot of communication. So there's a lot of hedging. And what I mean by that is, when teams are switching off and one player has an advantage, somebody will hedge just to kind of stop the ball a little bit. A lot of stuff that we didn't see from Kenny Payne at all. Really zero defensive principles, and his own players said that at the end of the season. So no, a lot of excitement when I watch the defensive tape. And when you watch offense, everybody's moving. There's a lot of motion on offense. And even when they're, setting up for an ISO play, right? It's like, say they overload to one side and they get a big man open, in the low post or at the, towards the middle of the lane. There's going to be somebody cutting. There's going to be somebody getting open. There's always movement. So, for instance, like in a Kenny Payne offense, even as things began to work a little bit better under Payne, you saw a lot of ISO ball where the ball would get into the post with Brandon, and it's either Brandon's going to score or Brandon's not going to score. Like he's either going to miss it and turn it over, or he's going to make the basket, and that's it. Nobody crashing the boards, nobody, making a concerted effort to really do anything after that, which was just immensely frustrating. That's not been the case from what I've seen at College of Charleston. One thing that we'll get into a lot, especially in the offseason, I think we'll especially talk about this after tomorrow, after his introductory press conference, is this is a very, very high energy guy. Like this is a guy that's going to come in with his dick swinging, like chip on his shoulder. This is not a guy that's going to give two shits if people don't think that he's cut out for the job. He just seems to kind of emanate that swagger. He just kind of exudes confidence, and that's exactly what Louisville needs. Josh.
I think he's the type of crazy that you need, like
Yeah,
at this, the kind of confidence and crazy that you need here.
yeah. I mean, everybody loves to make fun of like a Mick Cronin, Rick Pitino style coach that, or Buzz Williams, a coach that gets crazy, that's like getting in a defensive stance on the sidelines, that's, yelling at the refs, that's yelling at other players, opposing players, that's yelling at the other coach. He's going to bring a lot of that to the table as well. I fully expect him to come in and say something in the press conference along the lines of that he understands the pressure of taking a job like this, and that he's going to embrace that sort of pressure. With the ultimate goal of getting the program back to where we expect it to be. The other stuff about Pat Kelsey is, as well as, it seems like he gets his teams up. They haven't played a ton of huge games, but he gets his teams up for pretty big games. Last season, they only had 4 losses the entire year, one of which they led at North Carolina 50-43 at halftime. And North Carolina was just too much. A team like College of Charleston doesn't have a bunch of big guys, and so Armando Bacot just kind of feasted in the second half of that game. But this season they played FAU. They lost pretty handily to FAU this season, and they took a step back in many ways this year, but they still continued that high-paced, high-level offense. Jake, as you've kind of alluded to and mentioned, they're scoring about 81 points per game. Really high-paced offense, top 50 in tempo on Ken Palm. So, a lot of exciting things to watch, to look for. It'll be really interesting to see, how his style play, factors into the type of coaches that they, or not coaches, the type of recruits and transfers that they try to get in. I think he's going to try to kind of build this team like you would like a fresh NBA roster almost, like that. He's going to go out and build this team around what he wants to do, and find players that he can apply his principles to. So I'm not quite sure what to expect on that front yet. I don't know if they're going to look for guys that are highly efficient on offense. I know they have a player that just entered the portal within the last 2 hours. That is, I believe, second all time in College of Charleston history and 3-point field goals made. He had a game this season where he hit 10 threes in one game. He's had multiple games where he's hit at least 6. So that's exactly what we're looking for. Australian dude that just loves to just pop threes. So that'll be something that we can get into here in just a second. Quickly, we can turn our attention to questions on Twitter. I just asked people who are interested. A few people chimed in. Should we call Pat Kelsey Project Pat now? Yes, absolutely. I don't know why we haven't already.
Yeah.
Are we going to be able to get any guys back that entered the portal? Is Tyler going to stay? If I had to guess, I would say there's a 98% chance that Tyler's gone. And I'd say there's a 90% chance that he knows where he's going already. When is the best time to prune oak leaf hydrangeas? I would say near the end of the summer when the leaves are beginning to fade. I'm fucking pumped for Project Pat and the Dirty Birds. Me too. Whoa, this is heavy. I believe that was a Back to the Future reference as well. Just a few messages coming in as well. Let's check the Twitter DMs, make sure that we don't have anything pressing that we haven't already covered. We did put a poll out there as well. How do you feel about the new Louisville basketball coach, Pat Kelsey? Have you seen this poll yet?
I voted on the poll.
That's what she said. Very surprising, the results so far. So we have 990 votes in the last hour-ish. So I made the options: excited, cautiously optimistic, upset, and pissed. And I thought that upset would win in the landslide. Upset has the least amount of votes. 3.9% of people are upset about the hire. 4.7% are pissed. 34% almost are excited. And 57% are cautiously optimistic. So could it be that just there's a loud minority that's really pissed about this? I saw our old buddy Ross. Ross, hello. If you're listening, thank you for tuning in. Not excited in the least, and going as far as to say that Louisville fans need to boycott and not go to games to show their displeasure with the administration. I could not, disagree anymore with that. I mean, as a guy that went to 24 games in the last 2 years, I think I'm definitely going to start going now that there's a much higher chance of Louisville winning. They won 8 games this year, right? 8 games, 4 games the season before. So 12 games in the last 2 years. I would bet a great sum of money that Louisville wins at least 13 games this year. So I will be attending games and I will be supporting, and I would encourage others to do so as well. I don't think that this is as big of a catastrophe as people are making it out to be. I think we have fatigue. We have bad basketball fatigue. We have rumor fatigue. We have coaching search fatigue. We have, all of this is starting to wear on us because as people who are supportive of the program, who give our time and our money to the program, it's very difficult to get through, right? Especially as a program that was so well adjusted for almost 2 decades to winning and winning consistently. To if you go to a home game, they're probably going to win. If you turn on a game on TV, there's a very good chance that they're going to win. To basically everybody just like stops watching and stops going because it's that bad. So we're kind of hurting right now, and this is the first step towards healing.
Yeah, I think the fan base is a part of the fan base, and I think it's, as you see on the poll, the cautiously optimistic, that was the leading vote getter, correct? It's a loud minority of fans that are coming out and saying boycott the team, fire Josh Hurd, whatever. And I understand that to a point, and I think that's just more of how this coaching search has gone, with how public it's been that we want Scott Drew, which of course we should. We should all want Scott Drew, and we don't get him. And then how public it was that Dusty May is the guy. And then all of a sudden, Dusty May spurns us over Michigan. And then Josh Schertz is the guy. And then no, he's going to St. Louis. And then so we end up with this, at best, fourth choice in Pat Kelsey. And so I think a lot of the fan base, or that part of the fan base that is upset with this hire, is just more upset with how this coaching search happened and how public it was, that we were either turned down or just didn't end up with the guy that Josh Hurd wanted. So, and I understand that frustration, but at this point, being upset, voicing like your opinion that you should boycott Louisville because of this hire isn't going to do anything. Like, it's not. Like, to me, it's time to fully support this coaching hire, because at the end of the day, me and you can come on here for the next 30 episodes and say, fuck this, Pat Kelsey shouldn't be here, yada, yada, yada. That's not how we feel. But even if it was, that doesn't do anything. That does nothing.
Nothing.
The best thing is to get on board, support this coach, and hope for the best. And if it doesn't happen, that's okay. It's still going to be fucking better than what we've had the last 2 years. We can guarantee that. Another thing I want to let people know, Pat Kelsey will be almost the exact opposite of what Kenny Payne was the last 2 years. He is loud. He is a personality. He has energy. He will be out in the community. He will speak to media members. And then on the basketball side of things, do you want to know what his turnover to assist ratio was? Because Louisville was one of the worst. I think they were the worst Power 5 program when it came to assist to turnover ratio. 22nd best assist. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead. No, I was going to say, hit me with it. 22nd
best. I mean, so like we're going from like 300th best to 22nd best assist to turnover ratio, 32nd fewest turnovers per game, third most threes per game. Like, these are not things we were seeing with Kenny Payne. We just really weren't seeing a whole lot of anything. And just watching the few like short condensed games that I've seen of College of Charleston, there is a plan in place on both sides of the ball. On defense, it is pressure the ball. It is deny that first passing lane. It is take charges. There is a clear priority when players are on the court as to what they're supposed to do. And on offense, it's very clear as well. It's fast pace. It's top 50 pace in the NCAA, which isn't crazy high, but also you don't want to be the fastest team. Most times those teams are not the best teams. I think WKU was the fastest team in the NCAA, which they were good for WKU this year, but they're not the best team. You don't see UConn, you don't see Houston, you don't see Purdue sitting number one in pace. So he's fast enough to win He has defensive principles, and his teams don't turn the ball over. So to me, I think he brings a lot to the table for fans to get excited about.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think maybe Josh Hurd was just thinking opposites, right? Like Kenny Payne was a former player. Pat Kelsey's not a former player. Kenny Payne was really tall. Pat Kelsey's really short. Kenny Payne was a lovely milky chocolate man, and Pat Kelsey looks like he's Irish or German or something. Kenny Payne brought no fire. Pat Kelsey is probably the fieriest coach in college basketball. Kenny Payne never interacted with the fans. Pat Kelsey loves interacting with the fans. Kenny Payne said he understood the importance of and significance of the program, but never did anything to indicate that he understood that. Pat Kelsey does. Kenny Payne was supposed to be a good recruiter. Pat Kelsey has proven that he is a good recruiter and developer of players. He's been, if you talk to any people that are in the know, they talk about, his pipeline that he's developed. I know they have a couple of foreign players, including the Australian guy that we talked about on this past year's roster. So when you talk about, wanting to get away from what Kenny Payne was, Pat Kelsey, by every sense of the word, is a complete polar opposite of what Kenny Payne was. And that's probably what we need. I mean, that when you just get down to it, that's what we need. I did ask people yesterday, we never got to this because we got into so much other stuff. What is the most important thing to you when you're looking for Louisville's next coach? And you can rank them in order of importance if you want. Some of the examples I included were pedigree, experience, proven winner, passion, understanding of the significance of the job, recruiting ties, allegiance with NIL, energy, and style of play. And so here's what some people said. Proven consistent winner as a head coach supersedes all other considerations. Nothing else matters. Next is national rankings and offensive and defensive efficiency. Next guy said consistency and passion. Even if this means a lower level, we don't have to have some current all-star. It could be someone newer relatively to coaching. I don't want a name. I want a number on an AP poll. And I want postseason wins. That's what I want. Order of importance. Signs of growth with every team that they've coached at, whether it be growth in record or growth in postseason performance or a growth in recruiting, does not matter to me. Character and Louisville fit, proven success in more than one school. Jeff said he wants to be here. He wants a coach that wants to be here. Louisville as a community and fan base is different. We have fans who didn't even attend U of L. Basketball is an NBA team to us the same way that football is to an NFL team to us. Brom gets that. The next basketball coach has to understand that. I agree. Previously coaching for Arkansas is the main thing for me. Sorry, you did not win this one. Moopy Williams. Order of importance, says Mad Cardo 5. X's and O's, charisma, thick skin, passion, and recruiting. So if you look at a guy that has a list like that, I think that Pat Kelsey checks all the boxes. He's clearly a great X's and O's coach and has shown the ability to adjust what he does on the fly based on personnel. Charisma, I think that he's a guy that absolutely has that, even though some people think it comes across as corny from what I've seen online. Thick skin, yeah, this is a guy who just does not give a fuck. Passion, again, same kind of with charisma. And recruiting, again, this is a guy that's known as probably one of the better recruiters at his level. You talk about College of Charleston last year. Anytime you Google their team from last season, they're mentioned among or probably as the number one mid-major team last season. So this is a guy that got his team to the highest level, finished as a ranked team last year.
Yeah, and I was going to say really quick on recruiting. I know it's hard to kind of judge because, like, at the start of this, it was guys like Nate Oates and Eric Musselman.
Sure.
Scott Drew, who are pulling in like top 5, top 10 recruiting classes every year. College of Charleston in 2022 had the highest mid-major recruiting class in the country at 40th, which I know doesn't sound incredible because 40th for Louisville wouldn't be good, but fucking College of Charleston, a top 40 class is insane.
How many Power 5 teams are there?
70,
65, 70, something like that. So he beat out 20, 25 Power Five level teams. If you include the Big East Power Six, there's maybe 80, 90 teams.
Mm-hmm.
And he beat out half of those for some of the top names in college basketball. That's very impressive. A few other things people said: NCAA tournament success. That's the one thing that obviously we've talked about he's lacking. But again, a lot of guys, we brought this up yesterday. Dan Hurley had very little NCAA tournament success before he took UConn on a run to the national title. Has them back in the Sweet 16. They're the first team to do that since Louisville did so in 2013 and 2014. You look at Rick Pitino and his first two stints in college basketball. He was not greatly successful at UMass or Providence in the NCAA tournament. Providence, I think did he go to a Final Four with Providence in his second year there? But that was
I don't know what year, but
10, 12 years into his coaching career. And again, Providence is a Big East team. That's very different than, Providence is a team that can get a 1 seed. College of Charleston, unless they go undefeated, is not getting anywhere close to a top 4 seed. I mean, you look at Louisville's run in the NCAA tournament in 2005. They were a 4 seed that year. And you remember how good that team was.
mm-hmm.
They set that team up to fail, and all they did was just go out and beat the brains out of everybody until they got to West Virginia and then the big upset run. So, when you're in a lower level conference, it's very, very difficult to get one of those high seeds. I mean, look at Wichita State. That season that they lost like 2 or 3 games and they were an 8 seed, I believe, and had to play number 1 overall seed Kentucky in the second round. So there's something to be said for just getting your team to the tournament and then playing pretty close to the competition. College of Charleston put up 62 points in the second half against Alabama last week. There's something to be said for that. When Alabama, top 5 recruiting classes, one of the better coaches in the country, one of the better pedigrees over the last 5 or 6 years, playing against SEC competition all year, you go up against that Alabama team with, 5 starters and 5 bench players who probably all have less talent. I mean, let's just face the facts. They have less size, less talent, less speed, and they put up 96 points against Alabama. That's, not something to overlook as well. And then again, we go back to San Diego State the year before. San Diego State played in the national championship game last year, and College of Charleston played right with them to the very end, ended up losing by 6. So San Diego State almost, just like we talked about Dusty May with FAU, College of Charleston was right on the other side of that. So there's a lot to be said with that. I don't want to go down some long path to make excuses for guys, but you do have to put in perspective what it is that these coaches have done, have accomplished based on, what they have available, what kind of resources they have available, what kind of competition they play against, and ultimately what kind of players you're able to land because of that. No guy that's going to be going to the NBA wants to go to Winthrop or College of Charleston to try to make his way there. Plenty of guys that want to do that will go to Louisville. And so I think that's kind of where I would leave that situation.
Yeah, I think the one thing I want to talk about as well, and I think it's one of the reasons why I was a little higher on Josh Schertz than the rest of the guys, is one, I knew Josh Schertz could coach offense. Defense was questionable, but he had 3 16-point plus per game scorers on that Indiana State team that logically you're thinking, okay, if he leaves Indiana State, comes to Louisville, they're probably going to come with him, at least 2 out of the 3. He had Robbie Avila, Ryan Conwell, Isaiah Swope, all 16-plus point per game scorers. Pat Kelsey has some dudes, some underclassmen that are available to come as well. And I believe his top 3 underclassmen scorers are all already in the transfer portal. Now, that doesn't guarantee that they're going to come to Louisville, but I would assume we'd probably get at least 1 or 2, especially Rain Smith, the Australian guy that you've talked about, 13-point per game scorer, incredible shooter. He's got Ante Brazovic, 6'10" junior forward, 12 points, 6 rebounds, and nearly 3 assists a game. So a dynamic forward there. And then Ben Byrne Jr. as well, 6'7" forward, 12 points, 5 rebounds a game. So he doesn't have the guys, the Robbie Avila, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar that people were going to just fawn over if he came to Louisville. But I think he has, if you get those three guys, you keep two Louisville players, and then you go kill it in the transfer portal, which I think he will. Because if he was recruiting well at College of Charleston, who does not have nearly the budget that Louisville has, I imagine he's going to 10x what he did there. And I will say, I just saw on Twitter, someone said that Jody Demling was quoted as saying that Pat Kelsey's already been putting in work, calling donors, and is already working on a wish list for portal players. So
Wow.
that's a good sign. That's exactly what you want to hear.
Yeah, and I will say as well, I can imagine the 502 circle already has guys circled, no pun intended, that there are. I mean, we've seen somebody's been reaching out. I'm assuming it's somebody associated with them. I don't think Josh Hurd's making calls to recruits quite yet, but it seems to me that Louisville already has a plan in place for how they're going to navigate the transfer portal and recruiting. So that's great. And like you said, I would not be surprised in the least if a few of these guys from CFC end up coming here. I keep having to say CFC because I very quickly realized, if you just abbreviate College of Charleston, you're going to say a word that you're not supposed to say. So there was one, I've seen a lot of this come through as well today. So WJ the Excellent just responded to our tweet and said, remember when a coach left UK to come to Louisville basketball? I don't remember that. I remember that Rick Pitino left UK to go to the NBA, failed, and then came to Louisville and then, built the program from there. How the fuck did we go from Pitino to no one wanting the job? That's I can tell you definitively that is not the case. I can tell you, we talked again. This will be repeated ad nauseum. A guy that wants to, that wants to crawl to get to this job. Number one, I can tell you that Pat Kelsey is one of those guys. Number two, I can tell you that there are probably 3, 4, 5 dozen coaches out there that would have crawled to get this job. But those guys don't always, it has to be a copacetic thing, right? It has to match. You have fucking Bob Huggins going on the radio today saying straight up, Louisville should give me the job. I want the job, which obviously that's never going to happen in a million years. But everybody's mom on Facebook apparently thought that was going to happen. I just learned today that somebody had a sponsored post for Bob Huggins. But no, there are plenty of guys out there that want the job. But we're talking about, a top 10 job in the country. And if you have a top 10 job, the candidate pool is much, much smaller. Plenty of people want this job. It just might not be that the guy that you personally wanted to get the job wanted the job. But I think one thing that we have to take away here, when Denny Crum came to Louisville, nobody knew who Denny Crum was. He was an assistant at UCLA, right? When Chris Mack came here, yes, he had continued success at Xavier, but again, it wasn't a surefire thing that Chris Mack was going to succeed. When Kenny Payne came here, it was the furthest thing from a surefire thing that he was going to succeed. So all of that is to say that it's not always going to be that, Tom Jurich is bringing Rick Pitino in on a private jet and there's a million people at the airport waiting for them when they land. That's not always going to be the case. We're in an era of college basketball now where we're looking for who's that next up and comer. Is it a Josh Hurts? Is it a Pat Kelsey? Is it a Jerome Tang? Is it an Eric Musselman? Like, there's a bunch of these guys out there that are, a Richard Pitino. There's a bunch of guys that are in their late 30s, early 40s that are like, okay, well, this could be the next up and comer. Look at why do I always blank on his name over at UConn?
Danny Hurley,
the assistant coach, Luke Murray.
Yeah,
Luke Murray. Look at a Luke Murray. Like, is that guy an up and comer? As a I would almost be willing to bet a good sum of money that Luke Murray lands a head coaching job somewhere this year. Danny Hurley has straight up come out and said, our offense is completely different. We would not be where we are now without bringing Luke Murray in here to kind of transform what we do. There are plenty of names out there that aren't like prominent names that would, like Josh Hurd said, crawl to get this job, but they also have to be a fit. Like I said yesterday, Jerome Tang came in or Josh Hurd went out and interviewed him, and it wasn't a fit, and it's as simple as that. Plenty of people interview for jobs at companies for a position that only one guy's going to get the job. That's still the case at Louisville, and for a number of reasons, there's not like a huge name out there right now that's going to be a fit. And those guys that were the huge names, Louisville took a huge swing at those guys as well. So it's not that nobody wants to come here. It's the fact that it had to be the right fit for everybody. It had to be a copacetic situation. It had to be a guy that can, have this chip on his shoulder, that can overlook fans' negativity, that can push through difficult times, that we know is proven as a head coach, and that can, transform a roster, embrace the fan base, do all the things that's needed to be done. I can absolutely see a Pat Kelsey being at a women's basketball game with Jeff Brum. I could see Pat Kelsey at a local Catholic picnic. He's a guy. That's another thing we haven't even brought up. He's a Cincinnati guy, so he has ties to the area as well. Any thoughts on people that say things like, why does nobody want to come here anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything you said is true. Louisville is still in my mind, and I think in most rational minded people, Louisville's still a top 10 job. I think that is the case. I think that we tried to get Scott Drew. We tried to get some of those guys, but with Josh Hart's mindset, he didn't want anybody that had any issues in the past, whether it's a DUI, domestic violence, NCAA issues, whatever it is, that limits the candidates a lot, like a lot. And so that really made it difficult for us to get some of those top guys. And also, if we didn't have the money that we're used to having, or the money that the Big Ten and SEC schools, that's another limiting factor. So I don't think that's true. Another thing I wanted to bring up is the lack of NCAA tournament success, like as just being an automatic, like, nope, we can't hire this guy. I'm going to give you 3 names: Scott Drew, Nate Oates, Eric Musselman. Almost all of these guys outside of Eric Musselman, who went to a Sweet 16, had won less than 2 games in the NCAA tournament before ever getting hired at Alabama or Baylor or Arkansas. Scott Drew never made it to an NCAA tournament, never even made it. NIT first round and lost at Valpo before he was hired at Baylor. He's now a top 5 coach in the NCAA. Nate Oates made it to the tournament 3 times, won their first game twice at Buffalo, never any further than that. So not a huge amount of success, a losing record in the NCAA tournament at Buffalo. So, or I guess not losing, sorry. Yeah, losing record, 2-3 in the NCAA tournament. So nothing there. Eric Musselman, CBI championship, a loss in the first round of the NCAA tournament, a run to the Sweet 16 with Nevada, which is great. And then the next year, a loss in the first round. All these guys are incredible coaches. These are top 10 coaches in college basketball right now. So it's not a prerequisite to being a great coach that you have to have had a St. Peter's Elite 8 run or some incredible run in the NCAA tournament, a Dusty May Final Four run with Florida Atlantic. That doesn't preclude you to automatically being a great coach or not being a great coach. So I think that there's potential here, and that's why I put myself in the cautiously optimistic hire. It's been shown before that these guys at lower level schools, Nevada, Buffalo, Valparaiso, that are winning consistently there, but just haven't had huge successes in the NCAA tournament, they turn out to be great coaches because they get elevation at a better program, and their coaching style and their ability to recruit, which I believe Pat Kelsey has, wins out. And they end up becoming a top 10 name, a household name, a guy that'll be at Louisville for 25 years.
Yeah, I mean, you look at other guys that came in as assistants. I mean, look at Kevin Keats, a guy that, NC State, basically had to take a chance on him. Was Kevin Keats anywhere before? Was he at UNC Wilmington?
Yeah.
Is that right?
I think it was University of Missouri, Kansas City, I think is where he
Okay, that's right. It's one of those. Yeah. Regardless, some of these guys have to cut their teeth at a smaller program or come in as an assistant. Look at the guy at Arizona. I can't think of another guy's name, but was the longtime assistant at Gonzaga that gets basically brought on as an interim and does well at Arizona, so he gets the job. And now they've been really successful at Arizona. So there's, if you just go up and down the list of Sweet 16 coaching names, Look at Mark Few at Gonzaga. Look at, you know, what was our guy's name at Creighton?
Oh, Greg McDermott.
Greg McDermott. Thank you. Thank you. The other Greg M.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you go up and down this list, TJ Otzelberger. Like, none of these guys were huge home run hitters. And to say that nobody wants to come to Louisville, you got to put in perspective, right? How are schools acquiring some of these coaches? I mean, UNC, Duke, Michigan. Who else am I missing? All these coaches or all these teams are hiring from within or hiring former players, right? And with varied success. In this day and age, and really in the history of college basketball, it's unprecedented. With the exception, Roy Williams is the only name that really comes to mind that there's an exception here, where a coach was successful at another Power Five team and moved directly from that Power Five team to another Power Five team, like
Yeah, him or Bill
Roy
Self. That's it.
Williams. Yeah, that's I mean that's your list. So that's something to take into consideration. The other thing to take into consideration again is these buyouts. Buying out Mick Cronin for $16-20 million to bring him over from UCLA. Number one would be more than double any buyout that's ever been paid in college basketball. And number two, it'd be unprecedented for a coach to go from UCLA to Louisville, the head coach at UCLA to go and become the head coach at Louisville. That stuff just doesn't happen. Like, that's not the path that coaches take. That's not how it works in college basketball. We see it a little bit in football, but there's so much more money and prominence in college football that's just a completely different game, completely different level, budget, all of that. A lot more goes into that. So I think that's something to consider. And it's not like, people want to peg it as Josh Hurd swung and missed on all of these guys. But the reality is, what happened was Louisville had to find a guy that was in the right situation. It had to be the right fit. And, Dusty May saying no was not saying no necessarily to Louisville because he didn't like the program. Dusty May saying no to Louisville was he doesn't want the pressure of taking a job where if he doesn't win 20 games in his first season, or if he doesn't go to the tournament or win tournament games in his first couple of seasons, he's fired. Like, that's not going to happen in Michigan. If Michigan misses the tournament, they immediately just move on to football season. What's going on in spring practice? What's going on with the transfer portal? That's not the case at Louisville. If you miss the tournament, we're sitting here freaking following you with a helicopter, tracking your airplane, begging, I see a lot of people like begging players to stay on Twitter, that kind of stuff. Like, it's just a different level of pressure here. And you have to have a guy that's willing to come in and do it. I mean, I think a lot of guys look at what happened with Chris Mack. I mean, he got burnt out so quickly. I know all that stuff happened with his father passing away, COVID, like shit just hit the fan very quickly. But that can very easily happen with a lot of these coaches. You got to have the chops for it. You have to have the acumen and the ability to have 3 press conferences in a week, to go sit at a Roosters and have a press conference for an hour with 200 people stuffing their face with wings and just watching you talk about basketball. Like, that's the level of crazy we have here, right? So I think you got to take all that into consideration as well.
Yeah. Last thing I wanted to hit on is, what are the next steps that we need to see from Pat Kelsey? And I think one is knock this introductory press conference out of the park, which based on hold on, my cat will not get out of a shopping bag. Hey, Luna, can we stop, please? Thank
Luna.
you. Knock out the introductory press conference, which based on all the videos I've seen of him after wins in post-game press conferences, he has an ability to speak and motivate people with his words. So I think nearly 100% chance he's going to knock out this introductory press conference. Next thing is bring in high-level transfers immediately. And I believe that he will. It's not a certainty, but I think that he will. And so I think if he does those two things almost immediately within the first week or two, the tone of the fan base is going to change. You're going to see more people cautiously optimistic. I don't think you'll have full buy-in because you have to see results on the court to get that. But
Right.
the next steps are really important. These next 2 weeks, 3 weeks are really important to how Pat Kelsey succeeds in year one and how he's perceived going into year one as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see, I don't know if it'll happen, but I'd like to see him come out and set expectations right away. Everybody went crazy when Will Wade came in and said, we lost 25 games last year. We're going to win 25 games this year. I don't think he'll come out and make that kind of statement, but I'd like to see expectations set, winning the conference, winning NCAA tournament games. I think that's a really good start. Those are level-headed goals to set. And I should have prefaced everything with this because I feel like I have to every podcast and every time I write an article and every time there's anything centering around this discussion. I think that you have to still keep the pressure of the standard of the program. It's got to be NCAA tournament this season because with a number of coaches out there, but especially like with the Pat Kelsey, you can right this ship right away. You can win 20 games next year easily. And there's going to be opportunities right away. Louisville is in the battle for Atlantis again this year with a loaded field. If he comes in and wins a couple games in the battle for Atlantis, wait for that first home game when he comes back. Just wait and see. People's minds will change very quickly if you're able to, win some big games, take care of business in the early season. Like, who's to say that we're not looking at Louisville in late November of this year, 7 months away? Who's to say we're not looking at this and Louisville's 11-2, 10-3, something like that? I think that's absolutely a possibility. I think, like you said, it starts with doing well in the press conference, but I want to see him hire some coaches. I don't want to wait until fucking June 28th to hire the strength coach. I want to know who the strength coach is next week. I want to know who the assistant coaches are going to be. I want to know what his coaching pool salary is going to be. I want to know what are the types of players that he's going after in the transfer portal. I want to hear I want to hear him talk about that stuff, but I want to see execution. I don't want to have a roster ever again without a point guard, a backup point guard, somebody that can shoot the ball, guys that are willing rebounders, significant role players, guys that understand the system. We haven't had any of that stuff for the last 2 or 3 years. And I think that with a guy like Kelsey, with all of the tools that he'll have in place, sounds like he's already getting to work. And I couldn't be more excited to hear something like that.
Yep, I'm 100% with you. Last thing I wanted to talk about is what are the odds? We saw just a few minutes ago, about an hour ago, Brandon Huntley-Hatfield and Trey White both hit the transfer portal. I think we were kind of on the same page that Mike James, Trey White, and most likely Tyler Johnson were all going to hit the portal and find a new team. It hurt me a little deeply that Brandon Huntley-Hatfield entered the portal, and I'm kind of suspicious on the timing of that. Like, as soon as all this news comes out that Pat Kelsey is the guy, he's going to be hired, introductory press conference tomorrow, that Brandon comes out and enters his name into the transfer portal. And maybe that's just coincidence, but to me, that kind of says, okay, now I know who the hire is. I don't think I fit his system. I'm not excited about him as my coach. I'm going to leave. There's still a chance he comes back, but I'm just curious. We've got Sky Clark and Tyler Johnson and Emmanuel Okorafor as remaining scholarship players that have not entered the transfer portal yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would expect Sky to hit the portal. And to be honest with you, I think in this day and age, especially with the coaching change, I think it's silly to not at least put your name in the portal, to not allow yourself the opportunity for coaches to reach out, with the caveat that you could come back. We've seen it happen almost every single season for Louisville, right? Since the transfer portal and NIL has become a thing, some of these guys will enter the portal, see what's out there, realize what it's actually like to be recruited, especially from a team like Louisville had last year, and kind of come back and realize that maybe this is more home than you thought it was. But for a player like Brandon, for a player like Tyler, Sky, one of those, I think it's silly not to test the waters, to see what's out there. And maybe, maybe it comes down to offers. If Brandon says, I'm totally just throwing numbers up against a wall. Say Brandon says, this team's offering me 400. Can you guys help me find an NIL deal or NIL deals that adds up to 500? I'm sure negotiations like that happen all the time. And I would expect them to do that. Now that you can take advantage of your name and likeness, you should. So, Louisville has a good enough NIL pool that if players leave, when players leave, they're going to be able to replace them. But if there's a guy that you want to build around, I've said this for the last couple of months. If there's a guy you want to build around, it's Brandon. That's the one that I did not want to see hit the portal. But again, he did throw a caveat when he posts, he penned a letter. It was actually very well written, a little bit more thoughtful than a lot of these guys put out there. I think he's a guy with a good head on his shoulders and who's in serious contemplation about what he does next. But he just said that he wanted to essentially do that, test the waters, see if there's a better fit than Louisville. And, tomorrow, if Thursday, the 28th, if Pat Kelsey is introduced as coach and he in the same day goes and meets with the existing players that are on the roster, or if they come to his press conference, I'd like to see what the conversations are like and what players he tries to keep and what piques the players' interests, and I'm also interested to see, I know when Kenny Payne was introduced, a few players came to the presser. I'm interested to see if guys that are already in the portal end up going to the press conference. Is like, for instance, did a Mike James enter the portal, but he's interested, so he's going to show up and support his current program? Or do they mean portal's portal, I'm getting out of here? Because I think there are some players like that. And honestly, after what we saw this season, I think there are a few players, no offense to those guys, but I think that there's some guys that should try to find a better fit elsewhere. Brandon is the number one guy. It's if I'm ranking the guys on the team, as we've done a little bit already, it's Brandon, and there's a wide gap between him and number two. I like Sky Clark because I like his story. I like his leadership abilities. I like what he's brought to the table at points for Louisville. So I think maybe he'd be number two. Just a little inside info. I don't think Mike James is coming back. I don't think Tyler Johnson's coming back. I don't think Danilo's coming back.
Oh, no.
So,
dang it.
Oh, no.
All right. Cancel it. We're not making a tournament next year.
All right. Well, we'll end on that sad note then. Guys, if you're not already, make sure that you patronize our sponsors. Is that the correct word?
I think patronize is kind of a negative thing. I don't know if you want to say that.
You bring your patronage to our sponsors. Is that better?
That's much better.
Okay, provide your patronage, please, to our sponsors, especially Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon, the best bourbon in the world. No, in all seriousness, Mr. and Mrs. Bourbon is a great supporter of ours, and it's a product that we really love. So make sure you hit them up at store.mrandmrsbourbon.com. That's all we have for now. Things could change in the next 24 hours, and if so, we'll be back on here. But until next time, starting 502 podcast, let's get out of here and go Cards.
Go Cards.